Have you ever heard of Yemen? You probably have, after all. It's been in the headlines lately for not very pleasant reasons. Since the recent conflicts between Israel and the Gaza Strip, you may have heard a lot about this country, especially because of the Houthis, the group that has allied itself with Hamas and is causing trouble in the Red Sea. But what if I told you that Yemen has an unknown and happy side? Did you know that one of the Magi was Yemeni? Did you know that Yemen is home to its own version of New York? Oh, and what would you say about a tree that bleeds? Today, we're going to explore a side of this country together that you probably never imagined. So get ready for a journey that will change everything you think about Yemen. Number 1. Location and geography. Located on the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen borders Saudi Arabia to the north and Oman to the east. This country is a real mix of landscapes and diversity. In the west, for example, you'll find hot and humid coastal plains, while in the east, arid deserts such as the famous Rub al-Khali dominate the scene. And if you think Yemen is all desert and a scorching heat, you'd better review your concepts. Between these areas, the green mountains of Haraz rise up, creating a striking contrast with the rest of the country. The capital, Sanaa, is another example, as it is more than 2,000 meters above sea level, which provides a milder climate, surrounded by these impressive mountains. And there's more. Have you heard of the Socotra archipelago? Located about 380 kilometers off the coast of Yemen, it is one of the most isolated and biodiverse places on the planet. A third of the plants and animals that exist there are found nowhere else in the world. In addition, Yemen has a long coastline along the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. For centuries, this strategic location has made the country a crucial point on the trade routes between Africa, Asia, and Europe. With this insight into Yemen's geography, let's explore one of the country's most remarkable architectural gems. Number 2. Dar AlHajar. Imagine a castle that seems to have sprung from the rocks. That's Dar AlHajar, also known as the Stone Palace. Although perhaps not the typical European castle that comes to mind when thinking of kings or fairy tales, this construction is a true masterpiece. With its 5 floors, the palace seems to be part of the mountain, with decorated windows and carved wooden doors that blend in with the scenery. The palace, as we know it today, was rebuilt in the 1930s by Yahya Mohammed Hamid ed-Din, an Islamic leader. He used it as a refuge during the hottest months, receiving important guests and storing water in clay pots to keep it cool. Today, the Dar AlHajar is a symbol of Yemeni architecture. The palace, now a museum, allows visitors to explore its rooms, which are connected by a maze of stairs. So if you decide to visit this place, you'd better be in good physical shape, because we're talking about 5 floors of stairs here. And since we're on the subject of impressive architecture, let's move on to our next curiosity. Number 3. Sheba, the Manhattan of the desert. When you think of cities in the middle of the desert, what comes to mind? Perhaps a small oasis surrounded by endless dunes, right? Wrong, at least when it comes to Sheba. Known as the Manhattan of the desert, in reference to the island of New York with its hundreds of skyscrapers, this Yemeni city impresses. But unlike the concrete and steel skyscrapers of New York, here the grandeur comes from structures built over 1,500 years ago with clay and bricks, in an impressive example of ancient engineering. Founded in the Hadramaut Valley, this city is one of the oldest in the world to adopt vertical urban planning. At its height, it was a thriving trading center on the spice and incense routes, and local families competed to build the tallest towers, showing off their wealth and power. The The narrow, winding streets were strategically planned to provide shade during the day, keeping the towers cool even under the scorching desert sun. Each of these adobe buildings, some up to 8 stories high, houses several generations of the same family, creating a vertical community where space was maximized to resist floods and marauders' attacks. And do you know what's most fascinating? Its inhabitants still use the same clay to restore and maintain these buildings to this day. Number 4. Sanaa Old City. When it comes to architecture in Yemen, the capital, Sanaa, is a must. After all, we're talking about one of the oldest cities in the world. Sanaa's Old City is a veritable open-air museum with more than 2,500 years of history around every corner. No wonder it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. What's most impressive are the tall, narrow houses with alabaster windows and carved plaster, which look like they're straight out of an ancient tale. At the heart of the city is the Great Mosque of Sanaa, one of the oldest and most important in the Islamic world. Number 5. Dragon's Blood Tree. But Yemen is not just about ancient cities. Nature also holds unique surprises, such as the exotic dragon's blood tree, native to the island of Socotra. This tree impresses with its umbrella-shaped crown and the red sap, known as dragon's blood, that drips from its trunk when cut. This sap has been used for centuries in medicine, in the production of ink, and even as incense in religious rituals. In addition to its usefulness, the dragon's blood tree is visually striking, creating a protective shade for the plants and animals that live under it. Number 6. Socotra Island. Since we've mentioned Socotra Island, let's explore it a little further. Socotra is often described as one of the strangest places on the planet, and with good reason. The island is often compared to an alien landscape due to its peculiar flora and fauna. Located around 236 miles off the coast of Yemen, the island is home to such unique biodiversity that almost a third of its plants and animals are found nowhere else on Earth. This biodiversity is so impressive that UNESCO has declared Socotra a World Heritage Site. As well as the famous dragon's blood tree, the island is home to other bizarre plants, such as the giant Socotra cucumber and Olibanum plants, which produce incense, one of the first goods exported from the island thousands of years ago. Socotra's isolation for millions of years has allowed its flora and fauna to evolve in extraordinary ways. If you're looking for a truly unique experience, Socotra should be at the top of your list of destinations. And speaking of extraordinary things, let's move on to our next curiosity. Number 7. Queen of Sheba. Have you ever heard of the Queen of Sheba? If not, it's time to get to know one of the most mysterious figures in history. Mentioned in various traditions, such as the Bible, the Quran, and the Ethiopian Chronicles, the Queen of Sheba is surrounded by legends and mysteries. It is believed that her kingdom was located in what is now Yemen. Known as Bilqis in the Arab world, she shrewdly ruled a prosperous empire in Marib. According to the Bible, intrigued by Solomon's fame, the Queen of Sheba visited him, bringing exotic gifts and testing his wisdom. Surprised by the answers, she returned impressed to her kingdom. Narratively, this story seems to have been included in the Bible to highlight Solomon's wisdom, perhaps inspired by stories about a powerful queen who ruled the rich lands of southern Arabia. But did this queen really exist, or is she just a myth? What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Number 8. Hell's Pit. Would you dare explore a place known as the Well of Hell? In the Al-Mara Desert in eastern Yemen, there is a giant hole called the Barhout Hole. Local legends say that this hole is a portal to hell, inhabited by evil spirits. More than 30 meters wide and of unknown depth, the place is surrounded by mystery. Few people dare to go near it, but those who have the courage tell stories of strange echoes and inexplicable sensations. Dar AlHajar is a geological phenomenon, possibly a collapsed cave, but the lack of in-depth studies on the site only adds to the mystery. In ancient times, the locals believed that the pit was a prison for demons, and that anyone who got too close would be pulled in by the forces of evil. These stories were passed down from generation to generation, turning the well into one of the most feared places in Yemen. Recently, a team of speleologists decided to descend into the well to investigate its mysteries. But the extreme conditions and inhospitable environment made exploration difficult. What they found was a complex cave with unusual rock formations, but no signs of the evil spirits that legends suggest. After so much mystery, let's talk about a national habit that may seem peculiar to some. Number 9. A country addicted to khat. Khat is a plant whose leaves have stimulating properties and are chewed by millions of Yemenis every day. For many, chewing khat is a deeply rooted social and cultural activity, and it is common to see men and sometimes women gathered in groups to chew the leaves for hours. And believe it or not, during khat chewing sessions, people discuss business, politics, and even settle disputes, making it a central element of social life. Number 10. Strong bond with coffee. If you're a coffee lover, you've probably heard of the famous mocha. What you might not know is that the name mocha has its roots in the port city of Mocha in Yemen, which was one of the main coffee trading centers in the 15th and 16th centuries. Yemeni coffee, grown on the slopes of the mountains, was exported all over the world through this city, becoming a valuable and appreciated commodity. The term mocha came to be associated with the rich, chocolatey taste of the coffee that was exported from this region. Even today, coffee is an important part of Yemeni culture, and many consider the coffee produced in the country to be one of the best in the world. And while we're on the subject of culture and traditions, how about going into a coffee shop and seeing men in skirts sipping coffee and gossiping? Number 11. Men wear skirts. When it comes to men in skirts, the image of Scotsmen in kilts is almost automatic, isn't it? But you should know that in Yemen, the skirt is also part of the male closet. There, it's common to see men wearing the futa, a kind of skirt tied around the waist. This traditional garment is perfect for the country's hot, dry climate, offering comfort and practicality. The garment is so versatile that it can be worn both on a daily basis and on special occasions, and you can find it in a variety of colors and prints. And here's an interesting fact. In Yemen, white clothes combined with a dagger at the waist are the equivalent of our suit and tie. The daggers, known as jambiyas, vary in models and materials, with prices that can reach millions of dollars. The older they are, the more valuable they become. You know that saying, "An old pot makes good food"? Well, in Yemen, the older the knife, the better it is. Number 12. History. After so many curiosities and so much cultural richness, it's time to take a break and better understand the history behind this fascinating country. Yemen has a history that goes back thousands of years, and not just any history. We're talking about the cradle of great civilizations that prospered thanks to the trade in spices and incense. With the arrival of Islam in the 7th century, Yemen became a center of culture and learning in the vast Islamic empire. Cities such as Sanaa and Aden flourished and still today show the strong Islamic influence in architecture and traditions. The country was once divided into two parts, North Yemen, under Ottoman control, and South Yemen, a British protectorate. This division brought many differences, political, economic, and cultural, and of course, conflicts. It wasn't until 1990 that the two Yemens were unified, but the long-awaited peace never came, and to this day the country faces conflicts that continue to shape its modern history. Which is our next topic. Number 13. Current war. Unfortunately, Yemen has been ravaged by a civil war that began in 2014. This conflict involves several factions, including the Yemeni government, the Houthi rebels, and a Saudi-led coalition. The war has caused one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world, with millions of people displaced and living in extremely difficult conditions. Cities and towns that once flourished as centers of commerce and culture are now in ruins. Historic sites, such as the Old City of Sanaa, have been damaged by the fighting, and many of the country's natural wonders, such as the Haraz Mountains and Hadramaut valleys, have become inaccessible due to insecurity. The war has also interrupted the flow of humanitarian aid, leaving millions of Yemenis without access to food, water, and basic medical care. In recent times, the conflict in Yemen has taken on new dimensions with its involvement in clashes with Israel. The Houthi rebels, who control a large part of the country, have launched attacks against Israel, further intensifying the already critical situation. These clashes have only aggravated the situation, making it even more difficult for Yemeni civilians already facing hunger and disease to survive amid the chaos. Number 14. The Happy Land. To close our journey through Yemen, here's a curiosity you might not know. Have you ever heard that Yemen was called Arabia Felix by the Romans? Yes, Happy Land was the region's nickname, and no wonder. Yemen was a real jewel, famous for its wealth, driven by the trade in spices, incense, gold, and myrrh. This thriving trade transformed cities like Marib, Sanaa, and Sheba into true centers of wealth and culture. They were places where ideas and innovations met. And speaking of frankincense, gold, and myrrh, do you remember the story of the three magi who offered these gifts to Jesus? Well, there's an interesting connection here. Balthazar, the magician who brought myrrh, is said to have set out from the Persian Gulf, in the famous Happy Arabia. In other words, from the region we know today as Yemen. Despite the difficult times the country is facing today, the legacy of the Happy Land still pulses in the hearts of the Yemeni people. They keep alive the traditions and memories of a time when Yemen was the center of a prosperous empire. But it's sad to see that, for many, this land full of history and culture is anything but happy. And so we come to the end of our journey through Yemen, a country that, despite its challenges, is full of history, culture, and natural wonders that deserve to be discovered. If you enjoyed exploring Yemen with us, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next adventures in this bello mundo. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.